Hey, welcome to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case.
And I'm Renata Kiss.
And tonight, President Biden addresses the nation after ending his campaign.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaks to Congress.
And the FBI gives new details on the attempted assassination on Donald Trump. All right, starting out with this, President Joe Biden addressed the nation last night for the very first time since ending his re-election campaign. Speaking from the Oval Office, Biden didn't give a specific reason for dropping out of the race, but simply said it's time to, quote, pass the torch on to a new generation.
I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term, but nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation. You know, there is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now.
Biden then proceeded to endorse Vice President Kamala Harris to replace him as the Democratic Party's nominee.
In just a few months, the American people will choose the course of America's future. I made my choice. I've made my views known. I would like to thank our great Vice President Kamala Harris. She's experienced, she's tough, she's capable. She's been an incredible partner to me and a leader for our country. Now the choice is up to you, the American people.
Biden said it's been the honor of my life to serve as your president, but also said the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think is more important than that.
Meanwhile, Harris painted her vision for America's future in her most recent keynote speech at a historically black sorority called Zeta Phi Beta Inc. in Indianapolis.
I know who is here, and I know, therefore, that we share a vision for the future of our nation, a future where every person has the opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead, a future of social justice, health justice, economic justice.
She then contrasted her plan for the country's future with former President Donald Trump's plan, which she said was focused on the past.
In this moment, I believe we face a choice between two different visions for our nation. One focused on the future, the other focused on the past. And with your support, I am fighting for our nation's future.
The vice president emphasized her commitment to affordable health care, ending child poverty, and lowering the maternal mortality rate. She also touted her student loan forgiveness program, which she said was part of her effort to make the economy work for working people.
We believe in a future where the economy works for working people. That is why we forgave student loan debt for more than 5 million Americans. And if you or anyone you know benefited from that, please testify.
She concluded by slamming Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation-sponsored conservative playbook for a more right-wing friendly government. Harris called the plan, which largely promotes small government values, a return to a dark past. Harris then emphatically assured the audience, saying, "We are not going back."
Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump is ramping up the attacks against Kamala Harris. Speaking at a rally in Charlotte, North Carolina last night, Trump slammed Harris as a left-wing radical whose policies would wreak havoc on the country.
For 3.5 years, Lion Kamala Harris has been the ultra-liberal driving force behind every single Biden catastrophe. She is a radical left lunatic who will destroy our country. If she ever gets the chance to get into office, we're not going to let that happen.
Now, as you just heard, Trump has since crafted a new nickname for Harris, dubbing her last night as Lion Kamala, accusing her of lying to the American people about the state of President Biden's mental health.
In addition to her horrendous record as vice president, Kamala Harris has also been caught red-handed perpetrating the biggest scandal in American political history. For 3.5 years, Harris shamelessly lied to the public to cover up Joe Biden's mental unfitness, claiming that Crooked Joe was at the absolute top of his game. I don't think so.
During the rally, Trump attacked Harris's record on everything from abortion to the border. He especially took aim at her record on crime, as Trump received the endorsement of one of the nation's largest police unions that same day.
Now that she's running for president, Kamala is suddenly trying to transform her personality to pretend she is tough on crime. She's so bad on crime. She supports ending cash bail nationwide. She supports stripping police officers of legal protections, ending jail sentences for parole violators. And in 2020, she helped raise $35 million to bail out criminals released from jail.
This comes as a new CNN poll shows Trump currently leading Harris by 3 points.
Meanwhile, mainstream media appears to be scrubbing bad publicity for Vice President Kamala Harris to shield her from Republican attacks. Earlier this week, the Trump campaign said that the VP was a complete failure as border czar. Axios, CNN, and other media argued that was never her job. They instead claim her only role was to address the root causes behind mass immigration. Yet media, including Axios, widely used the term in 2021 after President Biden named Harris as the lead person who, in his words, stemming migration at the border. The Trump campaign responded that she can't rewrite history. Republicans like Representative Lee Zeldin say she can't distance herself from Biden's border policies.
This administration, they stopped construction of the border wall. They got rid of Remain in Mexico. They got rid of Title 42 without a replacement. They ramped up catch and release. These were policies of this administration. It's going to be very hard for Kamala Harris right now to say, I wasn't the border czar. I'm not responsible for these policies. She hasn't spoken up at all against the implementation of any of this, saying that she disagrees with any of it.
In similar news, the nonpartisan GovTrack abruptly deleted a 2019 report card that described Harris as the most liberal senator. It came after conservative social media users shared warnings that she was listed as being more to the left of Bernie Sanders. Harris has previously tried to blame Republicans for that title.
In the policies that you've supported in the past, you're considered the most liberal United States senator.
Somebody said that, and it actually was Mike Pence on the debate stage. But
yeah, well, actually, the nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator. You supported the Green New Deal. You supported Medicare for all.
And in a financial blow to the Trump campaign, billionaire Elon Musk is denying reports that he's donating $45 million a month to a Trump super PAC. Shortly after Musk endorsed the former president, the Wall Street Journal reported that he was planning to give tens of millions of dollars to the Trump-backed America PAC. The news was so widely reported, in fact, we reported it here on FISM News as well, that it was even touted by Donald Trump himself at one of his campaign rallies.
But Elon endorsed me the other day, and I didn't even know this, he didn't even tell me about it, but he gives me $45 million a month.
But now Musk says that's simply not true. He's telling reporters that it was made up by the Wall Street Journal.
So Musk, are you still going to donate to Trump? Do you still donate $45 million? I'm sorry?
At no point did I say that I was donating $45 million a month to Trump. That was a fiction made up by the Wall Street Journal.
To be clear, Musk says he's still donating to America PAC, that's the Trump super PAC, but at a, quote, much lower level than originally reported. All right, and up next, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gives his address to Congress as thousands of anti-Israel protesters rally outside. The details on those stories and more after this short break. Stay tuned.
FISM News is a conservative news outlet bringing you the latest updates from a biblical worldview. With us, you get just the news grounded in truth. And now with the new FISM TV app, you can take FISM News with you wherever you go, so you're never behind on what's happening. We update the app regularly with short clips you can watch at your convenience. So go ahead, visit the App Store and download the FISM TV app. Start exploring all of our content anytime, anywhere.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Hi, I'm Aisha. At first, I was debating whether or not I was really pregnant and took a test. While I was waiting, they talked to me about different pregnancy choices and different options and information that helped me be more educated. To confirm, I got an ultrasound of the pregnancy test, and it was for sure positive, and I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry, and it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
Welcome back to FISM News. I'm Renata Kiss. Well, let's continue with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech to Congress yesterday. He started by speaking on the nature of the war in Gaza.
We meet today at a crossroads of history. Our world is in upheaval. In the Middle East, Iran's axis of terror confronts America, Israel, and our Arab friends. This is not a clash of civilizations. It's a clash between barbarism and civilization. It's a clash between those who glorify death and those who sanctify life.
He then went on to emphasize the importance of the American-Israeli alliance.
For the forces of civilization to triumph, America and Israel must stand together. Because when we stand together, something very simple happens. We win, they lose.
Netanyahu added that he can assure America that together we will win. He continued by saying that those who attack Israel will pay a very heavy price, as he recounted a recent Houthi attack near the American consulate in Tel Aviv that killed one person and injured 9.
Last Friday, a third Iranian proxy, the Houthis, attacked Tel Aviv with a deadly drone. It exploded a few hundred feet from the American consulate, killing one person and injuring 9. On Saturday, I authorized a swift response to that attack. All our enemies should know this. Those who attack Israel will pay a very heavy price. I know that America has our back, and I thank you for it.
And as Netanyahu was giving that address to Congress, thousands of anti-Israel activists rallied outside. Demonstrators could be seen burning the American flag alongside an effigy of the Prime Minister himself. One protester held a shocking sign reading, quote, "Allah is gathering all the Zionists for the final solution," a direct reference to the Holocaust there. Meanwhile, others vandalized the Christopher Columbus Memorial Fountain with graffiti reading things like "Hamas is coming" and "Long live the resistance." Netanyahu directly referenced the protesters during his speech, calling them the, quote, "useful idiots of Iran."
Iran is funding the anti-Israel protests that are going on right now outside this building, not that many, but they're there, and throughout the city. Well, I have a message for these protesters. When the tyrants of Tehran, who hang gays from cranes and murder women for not covering their hair, are praising, promoting, and funding you, you have officially become Iran's useful idiots. These protesters hold up signs proclaiming gays for Gaza. They might as well hold up signs saying chickens for KFC.
The protests were widely condemned by Republicans and also by Vice President Kamala Harris, who released a statement of her own calling the protest despicable. At least 23 people were arrested yesterday.
Meanwhile, Republicans are cracking down on anti-Israel protesters with legislation. Representative Carlos Jimenez from Florida introduced a bill that would bar students from loan forgiveness who are convicted of hate crimes during anti-Israel protests. Jimenez said the bill would ensure those that are convicted of a state or federal hate crime will not receive loan forgiveness benefits. The bill was introduced just before Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke. Meanwhile, Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas also introduced a bill that would strip non-citizens of their visas if they committed crimes during anti-Israel protests. The bill would require the deportation of convicted individuals within 60 days of the committed crime. Congressman Jim Banks, who is leading a companion legislation in the House, remarked that their bill will create consequences for protesters, emboldened by the Biden administration's inaction on the issue.
Elsewhere, Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir is throwing his support behind former President Donald Trump. He made the endorsement yesterday, just hours before Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke to Congress. He said, quote, "I believe that with Trump, Israel will receive the backing to act against Iran. With Trump, it will be clearer that enemies must be defeated." At the same time, Ben-Gvir also criticized the Biden administration as well for emboldening Hamas while accusing the White House of trying to prevent Israel from winning the war in Gaza.
Elsewhere, NORAD reported yesterday that they identified Russian and Chinese bomber planes off the coast of Alaska. The agency says that American and Canadian fighter jets intercepted them and that the foreign airplanes never left international airspace. The warplanes involved were both designed decades ago, but the event is significant since it was the first time that Russia and China have conducted a joint bomber drill in the Alaska Air Defense Identification Zone. It also came 1 hour before President Biden's first address since ending his re-election campaign. And it's raised some alarm that it was a boundary test reminiscent of the Cold War era. All right, and up next, the FBI gives new details on the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. But first, we go to a moment in history.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. In our march through history, we cross the Atlantic and travel nearly 2,000 years back to the 1st century AD, during the apostolic age of the Christian Church. In the year 60 AD, the Apostle Paul, the second most influential figure in Christianity after Jesus Christ, was shipwrecked on the Mediterranean Sea on the remote island of Malta. Paul had once been a Jewish Pharisee and a murderer of Christians before his dramatic conversion on the road to Damascus, several years after the resurrection of Jesus. After many years of evangelism and several imprisonments, Paul was once again arrested for his faithful and continuous preaching of the gospel in the Roman Empire. Now, according to Acts 27, Paul was imprisoned aboard a ship headed for Rome. On board with Paul were his prison guard, a centurion named Julius, as well as his companion and fellow prisoner Luke. After making several stops along several eastern Mediterranean port cities, the ship was caught in a storm and ran aground just off the coast of Malta, about 60 miles south of Sicily. Miraculously, the crew survived. Almost immediately after their arrival to shore, Paul survived another danger when he was bit by a venomous viper, but suffered no harm. Many would have called it a day and taken a rest, but not Paul. The book of Acts tells us he immediately visited one of the locals who was very ill, laid hands on him, and healed him of his sickness by the power of Jesus Christ. The Apostle Paul eventually made it to Rome, where he continued to share the good news 2 years before his release in 62 AD. During this first imprisonment in Rome, he would write 4 New Testament epistles: Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, and Philemon. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
The miracle of carrying a child creates a unique bond between a mother and her unborn baby. She feels the baby's movements and responds to their needs even before birth. Help create that bond between an abortion-minded mother and her unborn child by giving the gift of life through Preborn. During the month of May, you can bless your mom for Mother's Day by giving to Preborn on your mother's behalf. For $28, you can sponsor an ultrasound scan that will enable an abortion-minded woman to hear the heartbeat of her baby. 90% of the time, that sound will change a woman's mind and cause her to keep their baby. Give the gift of life to the woman that gave you life by sponsoring an ultrasound. Go to preborn.com/FISM to give. That's preborn.com/FISM. You can help an abortion-minded mother receive discipleship, encouragement, and the strength needed to have her baby.
Did you know that you can always listen and watch Financial Issues online? Just go to financialissues.org/live or download the FISM TV app in the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. We stream our show every weekday morning starting at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. If you're looking for a biblical take on investing and current events and how it relates to the money that God has given you, then you don't want to miss Financial Issues.
All right, and welcome back to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case. We're going to begin our segment here with new details surrounding the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. FISM's Ian Patrick has more.
Well, the government was certainly busy yesterday with Biden's address to the nation and Netanyahu's speech before Congress. But amidst all of that, Congress also unveiled some new information on the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. This information comes from FBI Director Christopher Wray, who spoke before the House Judiciary Committee yesterday. In his opening statement, Wray first and foremost decried the shooting and called for an end to political violence.
The attempted assassination of the former president was an attack on our democracy and our democratic process, and we will not and do not tolerate political violence of any kind, especially a despicable account of this magnitude. And I want to assure you and the American people that the men and women of the FBI will continue to work tirelessly to get to the bottom of what happened.
Following his opening statement, a significant part of Wray's testimony focused on various aspects of the shooting itself. One of the notable revelations was that the shooter had actually previously researched information on President John F. Kennedy's assassination.
On July 6th, he did a Google search for, quote, how far away was Oswald from Kennedy? And so that's a search that obviously is significant in terms of his state of mind. That is the same day that it appears that he registered for the Butler rally.
According to Wray, the shooter had apparently scoped out the site about 2 hours beforehand using a remote-controlled drone that they found later in his car.
For about 11 minutes, from I think it's around 3:50 p.m. to 4 p.m., somewhere in that range, he was flying the drone, and we have the flight path. It's about 200 yards away from where former President Trump would ultimately be speaking.
Wray also said the shooter was not noticed wielding a weapon until he was actually positioned on the roof. Here's those details.
The weapon had a collapsible stock, which could explain why it might have been less easy for people to observe. You know, because one of the things that we're finding is people have observed him. The first people to observe him with the weapon were when he was already on the roof, and we haven't yet found anybody with firsthand observation of him with the weapon walking around beforehand. So that doesn't mean he wasn't, obviously, but the collapsible stock is potentially a very significant feature that might be relevant to that.
Now, as for how the shooter got up to the roof, Wray said their investigation led them to believe that he used specific mechanical equipment to aid in that endeavor. According to Wray specifically, quote, "We do not believe he used a ladder to get up there." And finally, the question of a motive was also tossed around quite a bit during the hearing, and Wray affirmed that the FBI is investigating the reason for the attempted assassination, but they have not yet found a definitive answer. Now, regardless, the shooting seems to have an impact on how the Trump campaign will conduct future rallies. Two sources familiar with the campaign's operations reportedly confirmed that the former president will no longer hold outdoor rallies for the remainder of the campaign season. This is Ian Patrick reporting for FISM News.
Thanks for that, Ian. That's certainly interesting to know. Meanwhile, voters are afraid that the upcoming elections will be tampered with. According to a new Rasmussen Reports Heartland Institute poll, 62% of voters are concerned about election cheating. The opinions came from fears of a repeat of 2020, and this was compounded by the poll's findings, which said that almost 1 in 5 voters received multiple ballots in 2020, while 9% of voters admitted they were not U.S. citizens or weren't sure if they were. A large portion of these non-citizen votes came from battleground states. The survey highlighted that independent voters were more likely to receive more than one ballot, although the number of multiple Republican ballots was slightly higher than Democrat ones. Donald Kendall, the director of the Socialism Research Center at the Heartland Institute, added that 28% of likely voters said they would consider cheating in the upcoming elections if given the opportunity. Based on these findings, Kendall concluded, quote, "These findings collectively illustrate a dire need for comprehensive election integrity reforms to be instituted in all 50 states.
My goodness. Very shocking, but I'm also shocked that 28% of people are that honest, saying that, yeah, I would cheat if I could. That's a real problem.
Right.
My gosh. Meanwhile, fallout continues from last week's massive Microsoft outage. Cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike is blaming a bug in its software update for crashing over 8 million Windows machines last week. The small update was originally meant to gather data on novel threats, but as we all know, instead what it did is it wreaked havoc around the world last Friday. The company reported yesterday that its test software contained a bug allowing it to approve the faulty update, which was then pushed out all at once. CrowdStrike says it's updating drivers to better handle program errors and is promising more rigorous testing as a result. The company also plans to roll out future updates at a more gradual pace.
And lastly, scandal rocked the 2024 Paris Olympics this week after the Canadian women's soccer team was accused of spying on their opponents. Several members of the Canadian Olympics Committee were sent back home after members of the New Zealand women's soccer team said one of their training sessions was interrupted by a spy drone sent from the Canadian team. The Canadian Olympic Committee later announced the dismissal of Canadian soccer analyst Joe Lombardi and assistant coach Jasmine Mander. Lombardi was later arrested by French authorities in a separate incident for improper use of a drone. In a statement, Canadian head coach Bev Priestman apologized for the incident and later announced she will not be present at the upcoming match between New Zealand and Canada. FIFA, the international soccer organization, is investigating the incident now.
I actually just saw that Canada won that match, so it does beg some questions, doesn't it?
Right. I'm sure New Zealand is not very happy right now.
That's right.
All right, well, that's our program for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please visit FISMnews.tv for more content.
And for more updates, you can always check us out on social media, or you can download the FISM app. Thanks so much, God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow night with more news coverage. See you then.